April 25, 1943. 23:17 hours. 15,000 feet over the blacked-out sprawl of Berlin, engines thrumming like a predator's growl in the icy void. Wing Commander Guy Gibson grips the control yoke of his de Havilland Mosquito, the cockpit a cocoon of dim red lights and vibrating aluminum. Frost bites at the edges of his oxygen mask, and the slipstream howls outside, a relentless banshee tearing at the wooden airframe. Below, searchlights stab the night like accusing fingers, flak bursts blooming in angry orange flowers that rock the plane with concussive thuds. You can almost feel the sweat freezing on your brow as Gibson banks sharply, the Mosquito's twin Merlin engines screaming in defiance, outrunning the Luftwaffe night fighters clawing upward from Tempelhof. One wrong move, and it's a fiery plunge into the heart of the Reich. But this isn't just any bomber. This is the wooden wonder, born from scrap and sheer audacity, slicing through the darkness at 400 miles per hour, faster than anything Göring's vaunted Air Force can muster. Gibson's voice crackles over the intercom to his navigator, "Steady on, old boy. Berlin's about to get a wooden surprise." The air reeks of cordite and avgas, the Mosquito's bomb bay heavy with 4,000 pounds of high explosives, precision tuned for the raid ahead. Gibson's heart pounds in rhythm with the props. He's flown Lancasters before, those lumbering behemoths that feel like sitting ducks in the flak. But this machine dances. It's light, agile, a ghost in the machine age of steel and rivets. As the first bombs whistle downward, shattering factories in a cascade of fire and debris, Gibson can't help but marvel at how it all started. Not in some gleaming factory, but in the mind of one stubborn engineer, back when Britain stood alone, her skies bleeding from the Blitz. Flash back to the grim autumn of 1939. War has erupted, and the Air Ministry in London is a hive of frantic telegrams and cigarette smoke. Steel is rationed tighter than a miser's purse, Hitler's U-boats are choking the Atlantic convoys, and every ounce of metal is funneled to Spitfires and Hurricanes. Enter Geoffrey de Havilland, the visionary designer with a pedigree in aviation stretching back to the Great War. At 57, he's no spring chicken, but his eyes burn with the fire of innovation. In the drafty offices of de Havilland Aircraft Company in Hatfield, Hertfordshire, he paces before blueprints scattered like fallen leaves. "Wood," he declares to his skeptical team. "We'll build it from wood." Laughter ripples through the room. Wood. In an era of aluminum monocoques and stressed skin fuselages. But de Havilland isn't joking. He's seen the shortages firsthand. The ministry's demands for a fast bomber are impossible with traditional materials. So, he proposes the impossible. A twin-engine fighter bomber crafted from plywood, balsa, and spruce, scrap from piano factories, furniture makers, even recycled shipping crates. No rivets, no welds, just glue and screws, layered like a fine violin. The team leans in, intrigued despite themselves. De Havilland sketches furiously. A sleek, shoulder-wing design with a pressurized cabin for high-altitude ops, powered by Rolls-Royce Merlins that could push it to speeds undreamed of for a bomber. It would be multi-role, fighter, reconnaissance, pathfinder, bomber, all in one airframe. Light enough to evade radar, fast enough to outrun Messerschmitts. But the Air Ministry box. A wooden toy in a metal war. One official scoffs during the pitch meeting in Whitehall. De Havilland's face hardens. He's faced ridicule before, with his Comet Racer in the 30s. He argues passionately. Wood isn't weakness, it's resilience. Molded plywood could be stronger per pound than steel, and Britain has forests aplenty. Plus skilled carpenters idled by the war. No need for scarce alloys. The concept, codenamed DH.98, is a gamble on ingenuity over industry. As prototypes take shape in secret hangars, the workers, many of them women stepping into roles vacated by enlisted men, feel the weight of the nation's desperation. Hammers echo through the night shifts, the scent of fresh-cut spruce mingling with the acrid tang of casein glue. De Havilland oversees every detail, from the aerodynamic nose to the retractable undercarriage. By July 1940, as the Battle of Britain rages overhead, the first Mosquito rolls out, a gleaming varnished beauty, 41 feet of wingspan, weighing just 14,000 pounds empty. Test pilot John Cunningham climbs aboard for the maiden flight, the Hertfordshire grass strip damp with morning dew. The Merlins roar to life, and the plane leaps skyward, smooth, responsive, a revelation. "She's a dream," Cunningham reports, clocking 380 miles per hour in level flight. But whispers of doubt persist. Will it hold up in combat? As the prototype streaks over the English countryside, de Havilland watches from the ground, knowing this wooden upstart could change everything. Yet, as Gibson's Mosquito unleashes its payload over Berlin that fateful night in 43, the true test looms. Flak rips through the wing, splintering wood in a shower of fragments. The plane shudders, but holds, resilient as promised. Gibson pulls up, racing for home, but in the distance, night fighter silhouettes close in. Can this scrap-built marvel truly outpace the hunters? The prototype Mosquito, fresh from its first triumphant hop, sits gleaming under the pale English sun at Hatfield Aerodrome. July 25, 1940. The varnish still smells faintly of pine resin, and test pilot Geoffrey de Havilland Jr., the designer's own son, leans against the wing root, wiping oil from his hands. He's just touched down after pushing the machine to 388 miles per hour in a clean configuration, faster than the Spitfire MKI at the time. The ground crew, a mix of grizzled veterans and young women in overalls, cheer quietly. But the celebration is short-lived. Word of the wooden bomber has reached the corridors of power. Within days, a delegation from the Air Ministry arrives unannounced, stiff collars, clipped mustaches, and expressions that could curdle milk. They circle the aircraft like vultures, tapping the fuselage with knuckles as if testing cheap furniture. Plywood and balsa, one senior official mutters, loud enough for de Havilland to hear. We're fighting the most mechanized war in history, and you propose we send carpenters into combat. Another points at the elegant, rounded nose. One good burst from a 20mm cannon and this thing will disintegrate like matchwood. De Havilland stands firm, arms folded, voice calm but edged with steel. He explains again. The structure is birch plywood sandwiching balsa cores, stronger pound for pound than duralumin in many respects, and infinitely easier to repair with basic tools in forward airfields. No strategic metals required. The ministry men remain unconvinced. They see risk, not revolution. Orders are issued quietly. Production is to be limited to a handful of reconnaissance variants, if any at all. The fighter-bomber dream is quietly shelved. De Havilland returns to his drawing board that night, jaw set, knowing the real battle isn't against the Luftwaffe yet, it's against his own side's caution. Across the channel, the Blitz is in full fury. London burns nightly under Heinkel and Junkers bombs. Every factory, every airfield, every drop of fuel is rationed to the bone. De Havilland refuses to let the project die. He quietly redirects resources, keeps the design team working after hours, and begins lobbying anyone who will listen. One key ally emerges, Air Marshal Wilfred Freeman, the hard-nosed head of aircraft production. Freeman has seen too many promising designs strangled by bureaucracy. He visits Hatfield in secret, walks the production line where carpenters from High Wycombe furniture firms are shaping wing spars with the same care they once gave to Chippendale chairs. He climbs into the cockpit, feels the lightness of the controls, and listens to the Merlins idle with their distinctive growl. Build me 50, he tells de Havilland. And do it quickly. Production ramps up in the shadow of doubt. The factory becomes a strange symphony. Bandsaws screaming through spruce, women steaming 3-ply sheets into curved forms, glue pots simmering like witches' cauldrons. Every Mosquito is hand-built, almost bespoke. The first operational variant, Photo Reconnaissance Mark I, takes shape. Stripped of armament, fitted with extra fuel tanks and cameras, it is designed to fly so high and so fast that German interceptors can't catch it. In late 1941, the first operational sortie launches. A lone Mosquito slips over Brest at 30,000 feet, photographing the Scharnhorst and Gneisenau in dry dock. The images return crisp and undamaged. The Luftwaffe never even sees it. The skeptics begin to waver. Reports trickle in from the reconnaissance squadrons, pilots returning with tales of outrunning FW-190s by sheer speed, of dodging flak with ballistic ease. One pilot, Flight Lieutenant John Wooldridge, describes the sensation. It's like being strapped to a runaway locomotive that answers to your thoughts. Yet the true believers still hunger for more. They want the fighter-bomber version, cannon-armed, bomb-laden, capable of hitting pinpoint targets and vanishing before the enemy can react. By early 1942, the pressure is mounting. Bomber Command is bleeding from night raids, losses in heavy bombers are unsustainable. A fast, precise, low-level striker is exactly what they need. Freeman pushes through an order for the FB.V variant, 420mm Hispano cannon in the belly, 2.303 Brownings in the nose, and up to 4,000 pounds of bombs or rockets. De Havilland's team works feverishly, modifying fuselages, strengthening wings, perfecting the bomb release mechanism. The wooden airframe proves unexpectedly tough. Early crash tests show it can absorb punishment that would shear metal. Then comes the moment that silences most doubters. November 1942, a Mosquito night fighter variant downs a Ju-88 intruder over the English coast. The wooden airframe takes cannon fire, loses chunks of wing, yet limps home. The pilot, shaken but alive, climbs out and pats the splintered plywood like an old friend. Word spreads through the squadrons. The wooden wonder isn't just fast, it's survivable. Yet Göring's Luftwaffe still rules the night skies over Europe. Heavy flak curtains guard every major city. Night fighters prowl with radar and upward-firing cannons. The Mosquito has proven itself in flashes, but it has not yet struck fear into the heart of the Reich. Back over Berlin in April 1943, Gibson's Mosquito streaks away from the burning target, engines at full throttle. A pair of Bf 110 night fighters latch onto his tail, their tracers stitching the darkness. The wooden tailplane shudders as rounds chew through the empennage. Gibson yanks the stick, throwing the Mosquito into a violent corkscrew dive. Wood splinters fly past the canopy. The pursuers struggle to match the turn rate, their heavier airframes wallowing. Slowly, agonizingly, the distance grows. Gibson levels out at 8,000 feet, heart hammering, and glances at the fuel gauges. They're leaking. Home is still hours away. Has the wooden wonder's luck finally run out? The Mosquito levels off at treetop height somewhere over the North Sea, engines throttled back to conserve what little fuel remains. Wing Commander Guy Gibson wipes blood from a shallow cut on his forehead. Shrapnel from the Bf-110's burst had punched through the thin plywood side panel and grazed him. The cockpit smells of hot oil, burnt cordite, and the sharp, almost sweet scent of freshly splintered birch. Behind him, the navigator, Flight Lieutenant Bob Hay, is already calculating the shortest safe course home, fingers dancing over the G-chart under the glow of a shaded lamp. "We've got perhaps 20 minutes of fuel if the wind holds," Hay says quietly. "And they're still looking for us." Gibson glances at the starboard wing. A jagged hole the size of a dinner plate lets in freezing slipstream. Moonlight spills through it, illuminating the layered grain of the plywood like the rings of an ancient tree. Yet the wing still flies straight. No flutter, no structural failure. That simple fact, in this moment of raw vulnerability, feels like a quiet miracle. He thinks back to the men and women who built her, carpenters who once made wardrobes in church pews, now shaping something that can outrun death itself. Cut to May 1943, just weeks after that Berlin raid. RAF squadrons are beginning to understand what they have in their hands. No, 105 Squadron at RAF Marham becomes the tip of the spear, the first to receive the FB fighter bomber variant in numbers. Pilots transfer in from heavier types, Wellingtons, Halifaxes, even battered Blenheims, and step into the Mosquito cockpit for the first time. The difference is immediate and visceral. Where the heavies lumbered like overburdened lorries, the Mosquito leaps off the runway after a mere 600 yards, climbs like a fighter, and accelerates to 400 miles per hour with contemptuous ease. One new arrival, squadron leader Reggie Wan, later writes in his logbook, felt like trading a farm tractor for a Grand Prix car. Low-level precision strikes become the signature. The Mosquito's wooden construction allows it to absorb battle damage that would cripple metal airframes. Cannon shells punch clean holes rather than shredding stressed skin. Crews discover they can fly beneath German radar, hugging the contours of occupied France and the Low Countries at 50 feet, so low that cows scatter and washing lines whip past the props. On July 30, 1943, 18 Mosquitoes from 105 and 139 squadrons launch Operation Whitebait, a daylight pinpoint attack on the power station at Amiens. They race across the channel at wave-top height, then pull up sharply over the French coast, weaving through flak and small arms fire. Bombs fall with surgical accuracy, the plant is crippled, yet civilian casualties are minimal. The attackers vanish before the first Bf-109s can scramble. Hermann Göring is furious. In a speech broadcast later that month he rages, "It makes me furious when I see the Mosquito. I turn green and yellow with envy. The British, who can afford aluminum, have the impudence to put forward this wooden thing made of nothing but plywood and glue." His words are meant to mock, but they betray something deeper, fear. The Luftwaffe's best interceptors, the FW-190 and Bf-109, are simply too slow in the cruise to catch a Mosquito once it has dropped its load and turned for home. Night fighter pilots report the same frustration. Radar contacts appear, close rapidly, then disappear as the wooden bomber accelerates away into the darkness. The versatility grows dizzying. Some Mosquitoes carry 4 500-pound bombs plus 8 rockets for anti-shipping strikes. Others are fitted with 57mm (cc) cannons to hunt U-boats in the Bay of Biscay. A few become pathfinders for Bomber Command's main force, dropping target markers with unerring accuracy before racing clear. Still others fly unarmed photo reconnaissance missions so deep into Germany that they photograph Berlin in broad daylight while the flak gunners below can only watch helplessly. De Havilland himself, now nearing 60, visits Marham to speak with the crews. He walks the dispersals, hands clasped behind his back, listening as young pilots describe how the machine feels alive under their fingers. One Australian flight lieutenant tells him, "Sir, she doesn't fly, she dances." De Havilland smiles quietly. He knows the cost. Every Mosquito lost is not just metal and engines, but months of patient craftsmanship by men and women working by blackout lamps. Yet the production lines never stop. By mid-1943, over 1,000 have been delivered, built in Britain, Canada, even Australia, wood sourced from birch forests in the Urals smuggled through neutral Sweden, and spruce from Canadian Pacific Coast mills. Back in the North Sea, Gibson's Mosquito is limping toward the English coast. Fuel needles flicker near empty. A coastal battery opens fire from the Dutch shore, tracer arcs lazily upward. Gibson jinks left, then right, the wooden airframe groaning but holding. Hay calls out bearings. Ahead, the first glim of dawn touches the horizon. Then, faintly, the welcome flicker of a British searchlight sweeping the sky, friendlies guiding them in. They cross the coast at 200 feet, engines coughing on the last vapors of fuel. The undercarriage locks down with a thump. Gibson flares over the perimeter fence at Marham, touches down, and rolls to a stop on the grass. Silence falls, broken only by the ticking of cooling exhausts. Ground crew swarm the aircraft, staring at the splintered holes, the shredded control surfaces. Gibson climbs out, legs unsteady, and pats the nose. "Good girl," he murmurs. The Mosquito has survived another night. But greater trials await, raids that will demand everything this unlikely wooden warrior can give. The summer of 1943 fades into autumn, and the Mosquito's legend spreads like wildfire through the Allied air forces. At bases across East Anglia, crews gather in Nissen huts over mugs of bitter tea, swapping stories of impossible escapes and pinpoint strikes. One such tale comes from Operation Jericho, February 18, 1944, a mission that pushes the wooden wonder to its limits. 18 Mosquitoes from 140 Wing, including elite Australian and New Zealand squadrons, are tasked with breaching the walls of Amiens prison in occupied France. Inside, hundreds of French resistance fighters await execution by the Gestapo. The RAF's orders: bomb the walls with precision to allow an escape, without harming the prisoners. Leading the raid is Group Captain Percy Picard, a tall, unflappable Englishman with a mustache like a broom and a reputation for cool under fire. He briefs his crews at dawn, the air thick with the scent of dew-soaked grass and avgas. "We'll go in low, 20 feet off the deck. Drop delayed fuse bombs to punch through those walls. No room for error." The pilots nod, knowing the risks: French anti-aircraft guns, Luftwaffe patrols, and the sheer audacity of flying heavy-laden bombers at hedge-hopping altitudes. Picard's own Mosquito, F for Freddy, is loaded with 4 500-pounders, each set to explode 11 seconds after impact. They launch at 1100 hours, streaking across the channel in tight formation. The North Sea gives way to the French coastline, where they drop even lower, engines howling as they skim snow-dusted fields. Farmers stare up in astonishment, a milkmaid waves involuntarily. Then, the prison looms, a grim stone fortress ringed by watchtowers. Flak erupts immediately, black puffs stitching the sky. Picard's Mosquito leads the charge, diving through the barrage. He releases his bombs at 50 feet, pulling up sharply as the delayed fuses count down. Behind him, the other aircraft follow suit, their wooden airframes flexing under the G-forces. Explosions rip through the walls in a cascade of masonry and dust. Prisoners pour out like ants from a disturbed hill, scrambling for freedom under the cover of chaos. But the cost is high. 2 Mosquitoes are hit mid-run, one bursts into flames, splintering into a fireball against the prison grounds. Picard's navigator shouts a warning: FW-190's inbound from a nearby airfield. The surviving Mosquitoes scatter, racing for the coast at full throttle. Picard covers the retreat, his cannons barking at the pursuers. A burst of 20mm shells rakes his tail, wood shreds, controls go mushy. "She's holding," he grits out, but the starboard Merlin coughs black smoke. The raid succeeds, over 250 prisoners escape, many rejoining the resistance. But Picard doesn't make it home. His Mosquito, riddled and flaming, crashes in a French field. The news hits the squadrons hard. A quiet memorial service follows at Marham, with de Havilland himself attending, hat in hand. Yet the mission cements the Mosquito's reputation. No other aircraft could have flown so low, so fast, with such accuracy. The press dubs it the Gestapo's nightmare, and morale soars. As 1944 unfolds, the Mosquito adapts to new roles with chameleon-like ease. In the run-up to D-Day, reconnaissance variants map Normandy beaches, photographing gun emplacements at wave-skimming heights while dodging 88mm fire. Night intruder versions prowl over German airfields, catching Luftwaffe pilots on takeoff or landing, easy prey for the Hispano cannons. One such ace, Wing Commander Bob Bram of 141 Squadron, racks up 29 kills in his Mosquito, describing the thrill: "You feel invincible, slipping through the dark like a shadow with fangs." Production hits its stride. Factories in Britain churn out over 7,000 by war's end, with variants sprouting like branches. The high-altitude PR.34 with a 40,000-foot ceiling, the FB-18CC, armed with a 57mm anti-tank gun for shredding U-boats. Even the Royal Navy gets in on the act, with Sea Mosquitoes launching from carriers to hunt shipping in Norwegian fjords. The wooden construction proves a boon in the field. Damaged sections are patched with plywood sheets and glue, often overnight, by mechanics who were once joiners or boat builders. Göring's envy turns to desperation. He orders his engineers to copy the design, but the Focke-Wulf Ta 154 inches Mosquito falters, plagued by glue failures and structural issues. The original reigns supreme. In thunderous raids over Berlin, Mosquitoes now lead the heavies, marking targets with flares while evading night fighters. Pilots like Gibson, now leading the famous 617 inches Dambusters squadron, transition to Mosquitoes for special ops, marveling at how the wooden bird handles like a fighter yet carries a bomber's punch. You can almost hear the roar of those Merlins echoing across the years, a testament to ingenuity in the face of scarcity. But as Allied armies push into Germany, the Mosquito faces its ultimate test, penetrating the heart of the Reich, where defenses are thickest and the stakes are total victory or utter defeat. Deep in enemy territory, a lone Mosquito streaks toward a high-value target, a V-2 rocket factory buried under concrete. Flak fills the sky, interceptors close in. The pilot spots something new on the horizon: jet trails from Mi-262s, the Luftwaffe's wonder weapon. Faster than anything before, they bear down like hawks on a sparrow. Can even the wooden wonder outwit the jets? March 31, 1945. 9:42 hours. 28,000 feet above the Harz Mountains, central Germany. Squadron leader Tony Iveson grips the yoke of his Mosquito FB-V, call sign, K King, as the twin Merlins strain at maximum boost. The target today is the underground Mittelwerk factory near Nordhausen, birthplace of the V-2 rocket, the Reich's last desperate terror weapon. The bomb bay carries 4 500-pounders fused for maximum penetration. The mission is to crater the rail lines feeding the complex before the rockets can be rolled out again. Below, the landscape is a patchwork of snow-dusted pine and scarred earth from earlier raids. Ahead, the sky is clear, too clear. Iveson's navigator, Flight Lieutenant Jim Jock McIntosh, peers through the blister window. Flak starting up, skipper. Light stuff for now. Tracers drift lazily upward like slow fireworks. Then something changes. 2 bright points appear on the horizon, moving fast, too fast. Twin jet trails, stark white against the blue. Mi-262 Sturmvogel. The Luftwaffe's 1,000 km/h Swallow has finally caught up. Jets, Iveson snaps. Full throttle. Get us down low. He shoves the nose over into a steep dive, the wooden airframe creaking as airspeed builds. The Mosquito accelerates hard, 420 mph indicated, then 440, still slower than the jets in level flight, but the dive gives precious seconds. The Mi-262s bank to follow, their Jumo 004 engines roaring like blowtorches. One opens fire at extreme range, 30mm Mk108 shells arc past, missing by yards. Iveson jinks left, then right, using every trick he knows: wing overs, split S-turns, anything to spoil the gunner's aim. The Mosquito responds instantly, light on the controls despite the damage it's already taken from earlier flak. McIntosh calls bearings. They're gaining, closing at 2 o'clock high. Iveson glances at the altimeter, 12,000 feet and dropping fast. He levels out at 3,000 feet, skimming treetops, the props chopping through thin mist. The jets follow, but the low altitude plays havoc with their handling. The 262 is a handful at low level, prone to compressor stalls if the pilot pushes too hard. Iveson uses every contour of the terrain, valleys, ridges, even the smoke from burning villages, to break line of sight. One jet overshoots, its pilot pulling up sharply to avoid the ground. The second presses the attack, cannon barking. A burst rakes the Mosquito's port wing, plywood shreds away in long ribbons, exposing the spruce spar beneath. Fuel sprays in a fine mist, but miraculously, no fire. Iveson feels the controls grow heavy. "We've lost aileron authority on the left," he reports calmly. "Jock, get ready to bail if she quits on us." McIntosh is already plotting an emergency heading toward Allied lines. Then the jet pilot makes a fatal mistake. He commits to a low pass, trying to rake the Mosquito from behind. Iveson hauls back on the stick, forcing the battered aircraft into a violent zoom climb. The 262 overshoots again, presenting its belly. Iveson snaps the nose around, impossible for most bombers, but the Mosquito's fighter-like agility shines here. 4 20mm Hispano cannons in the belly roar to life. Tracers stitch across the jet's starboard engine nacelle. Black smoke erupts. The 262 rolls onto its back and plummets, trailing fire into the forest below. The second jet breaks off, climbing steeply for altitude and safety. Iveson levels out, breathing hard. The Mosquito is limping, port engine temperature climbing, fuel leaking, controls sloppy, but still airborne. They press on to the target. At 500 feet they release the bombs in a ripple salvo. The rail yard erupts in geysers of earth and twisted steel. Secondary explosions ripple through ammunition stores. Mission accomplished. They limp westward, nursing the wounded aircraft across the front lines. Allied AK gunners hold their fire as the familiar Mosquito silhouette appears, trailing smoke but waving its wings in the recognition signal. Iveson sets her down at a forward strip near the Rhine, the undercarriage. Collapsing on touchdown, the Mosquito skids to a halt in the mud, props windmilling to a stop. Ground crew rush forward. Iveson climbs out, legs shaking, and looks back at the splintered, oil-streaked airframe. "She brought us home," he says simply. That encounter marks one of the few recorded instances of a Mosquito downing a jet in combat. It proves the wooden wonder's extraordinary adaptability, even against the aircraft that would define the next era of air warfare. By April 1945, with Allied armies closing on Berlin, Mosquito squadrons fly almost daily, hammering rail yards, bridges, command posts, and V-weapon sites. Losses mount, wood burns fiercely once ignited, and the jets are getting better, but the tempo never slackens. De Havilland, now in his 60s, receives a quiet letter from the Air Ministry. The Mosquito has flown more operational sorties per aircraft than any other RAF type in the European theater. Its wooden construction, once ridiculed, has become legend. As the war nears its end, one final raid looms, the last great Mosquito operation of the conflict. A small force is dispatched to strike Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen, deep in occupied Denmark. The target, a school building requisitioned by the secret police, holding files on thousands of resistance members. The mission is surgical, high risk, and demands perfection. But the Danes have a surprise waiting. March 21, 1945, 12:14 hours. Copenhagen, Denmark, occupied territory under a gray, drizzling sky. 6 Mosquitoes of 464 RAAF and 487 RNZAF squadrons, led by Wing Commander Robert Norman Battison, race across the Øresund at wave-top height, engines throttled back to muffle their roar. The target, the Schelhus, Gestapo headquarters housed in the former French school on the western edge of the city. Inside its attics and cellars, files list thousands of Danish resistance members, names, addresses, families. If those records survive, the Gestapo can roll up the entire underground network in days. The RAF's order is stark: destroy the building and its archives. Minimize civilian casualties. The school is still in use, children and teachers remain inside. Bateson's briefing the night before had been grim. "We go in at rooftop level. First wave hits the western gable to collapse the roof and start the fire. Second wave follows 30 seconds later to finish the job. No second chances. Once the bombs go, we're gone." The pilots nod, faces set. They know the math. Low-level bombing in daylight over a built-up city means flak from rooftops, small arms fire from every window, and zero margin for error. One stray bomb, 1 second late, and schoolchildren die. The formation splits over the Danish coast. They drop to 50 feet, skimming frozen fields and frozen canals, navigation by church spires and factory chimneys. Copenhagen appears ahead. Red-tiled roofs, slender church towers, the gray sprawl of the capital under low cloud. Anti-aircraft fire begins the moment they cross the harbor. 20mm and 40mm guns on rooftops, machine guns from balcony railings. Tracers whip past the canopies like horizontal rain. The lead Mosquito, Bateson's own, banks hard around the Tivoli Gardens, then straightens for the final run. The shell hiss looms. A 5-story brick building with a mansard roof, windows blacked out, swastika banners limp in the drizzle. Batison releases first. 4 500-pound delayed fuse bombs tumble free. They strike the western wall at 30 feet, burrowing deep before detonating. A thunderous crack, masonry erupts outward in a fountain of brick and glass. The second wave follows, bombs slamming into the same breach, widening it. Flames lick upward almost instantly, wooden floors, paper files, Gestapo furniture feeding the blaze. The third and fourth aircraft strafe the roof with cannons to ensure ignition. Smoke billows black and thick, curling over the city like a funeral shroud. But precision comes at a price. One Mosquito, piloted by Flight Lieutenant Eric Dawson, takes a direct hit from 20mm fire as he pulls up. The starboard engine explodes in a fireball, the wooden wing folds like wet cardboard. Dawson fights for control, but the aircraft rolls inverted and crashes into a school playground 2 streets away. Another Mosquito is holed through the fuselage, its navigator is killed instantly by shrapnel. The survivors streak for Sweden, engines screaming, fuel tanks punctured, trailing glycol and smoke. Back in Copenhagen, the shell hiss burns furiously. Gestapo officers scramble from windows, some jumping to their deaths. Files burn to ash in the attics. The Danish resistance watches from rooftops, hearts pounding, success, but at terrible cost. Tragically, several bombs overshoot or ricochet, fragments strike the nearby Jeanne d'Arc school, killing 22 children and injuring dozens more. The news reaches Britain within hours. Grief ripples through the squadrons. Batison, safe on the ground in Sweden, writes in his log, "Target destroyed. But we killed children, God forgive us." The raid is hailed as one of the most precise low-level attacks of the war, yet it leaves a bitter aftertaste. Mosquito crews fly home subdued, the wooden wonder's speed and agility no shield against the moral weight of collateral damage. De Havilland, reading the after-action reports in Hatfield, sits quietly for a long time. He knows his creation has saved countless lives through its precision and versatility. He also knows every bomb dropped carries a human price. By April 1945, the end is near. Mosquitoes fly ceaselessly, marking targets for the heavies, hunting fleeing U-boats in the Baltic, strafing troop columns on the autobahns. On May 2, as Berlin falls, a final Mosquito sortie photographs the ruins of the Reich Chancellery, the red flag already flying over the smoldering husk. The wooden airframes, patched and repatched, have outlasted steel empires. In the quiet aftermath, de Havilland stands on the Hatfield flight line watching a Mosquito take off one last time, perhaps for a victory flypast, perhaps just to feel the air again. The Merlins sing their familiar song, the plywood wings catch the sun, and for a moment the old engineer allows himself a small, tired smile. What began as a ridiculed idea, scrap wood against the might of the Third Reich, had become one of the most effective weapons of the war. The wooden wonder had not just survived, it had rewritten the rules.